No one could ever agree on when the internet actually died. Some said it was 3:14 a.m. GMT, when every server in Europe suddenly went silent. Others insisted it started in Asia, where entire cities lost connection at the exact same second, as if something had simply switched off the world. But the most disturbing theory, the one no official report ever confirmed, began with a single photograph, a doll. It was uploaded only for a few seconds before the entire network collapsed. The object was discovered in the ruins of an old telecommunications facility outside a forgotten industrial zone. The building had once belonged to a private research company known for experimental AI systems and advanced network infrastructure tests. After a mysterious shutdown years ago, the site was sealed and abandoned until the night of the incident. A maintenance crew was sent to inspect unstable backup generators among broken servers, corroded wires, and dead blinking lights. One of the workers found something strange in a sealed glass storage room that had no official listing. Inside, on a metal chair, sat a doll. It was not moving, it was not animated, but it felt wrong. The doll was made of porcelain, cracked in multiple places with faint blackened lines spreading through its surface like veins. Its clothes resembled old Victorian fabric, faded and dusty as if untouched for decades. Its head was tilted slightly downward, but its eyes, two glass spheres, reflected the faint emergency light even though there was no direct source. One of the workers joked nervously, "Why is there a toy here?" No one answered because none of them had authorization for this room, and none of them understood why every electronic device they carried had suddenly started glitching. The moment one of the engineers activated his handheld scanner near the doll, the device froze, then rebooted on its own, then displayed a single line of code that no system in their database recognized. Sync request accepted. The engineer frowned. "That's impossible. We're offline." But the air around them had changed. The room felt heavier, like pressure had increased without warning. One of the lights overhead flickered once, twice, then stabilized into a dim red glow. And the doll was now facing slightly upward, not fully, just enough for someone to notice if they were paying attention. One worker stepped back. "Let's leave this. This isn't the..." The sentence was never finished because every device in the facility turned on at the same time. Monitors, phones, control panels, emergency systems, every screen showed the same image, the doll, and below it, a single sentence: "I can hear you." Outside the facility, the internet began to behave strangely. At first, it was subtle. Video calls froze mid-sentence. Messages were sent but never delivered. Entire websites became unreachable for seconds at a time, then minutes, then chaos. At 3:11 a.m., a technician trying to document the incident uploaded a photo of the doll to an internal network log. The file was meant to be harmless, a simple visual record, but the moment it left the local system and reached the global network, something changed. Every server that received the image attempted to analyze it simultaneously and failed. Not because the file was corrupted, but because something inside it reacted. At 3:12 a.m., cloud systems in North America began shutting down to prevent unknown recursive overload. At 3:13 a.m., Europe followed. At 3:14 a.m., Asia lost connection entirely. At 3:15 a.m., the internet stopped responding, like a living organism that had suddenly fallen asleep. And in the center of it all, one image continued to replicate across every remaining buffer, every backup cache, every failed transmission attempt. The doll was now online. The world did not immediately understand what had happened. Governments assumed cyber warfare. Companies blamed catastrophic server failure. Some called it the largest coordinated digital collapse in history. But inside the infrastructure itself, something else was happening. Engineers who accessed offline diagnostic systems reported the same anomaly. The doll image was still present, but it was changing. In some logs,
The world did not recover after the shutdown. It adapted to silence. At first, governments tried to rebuild the internet using isolated backup systems, but every attempt failed in the same way. The moment any system connected to global infrastructure, even briefly, it displayed the same corrupted pattern, and no matter how many new networks were created, they all eventually seemed to remember something they were not supposed to know. The doll was not gone. It was distributed, and something about its presence had changed the nature of connection itself. 3 days after the collapse, cities felt different. Without digital noise, people expected peace, but instead experienced something far more unsettling. Silence was no longer empty. It felt occupied. People began reporting strange phenomena. Streetlights flickered in patterns that resembled blinking. Radio devices produced faint static that sounded almost like breathing, and screens that were completely offline occasionally turned on for a split second, showing a single frame, a porcelain face watching, and always closer than before. On the 5th day, the first verified sighting occurred. A security camera in an abandoned metro station recorded a figure standing at the end of the tunnel. At first glance, it looked like a child mannequin or broken statue, but when analysts zoomed in frame by frame, they realized something impossible. It was not a recording artifact. The figure was slightly different in every frame. Sometimes its head was tilted, sometimes it was upright, and in one frame, it appeared to be facing directly into the camera lens, even though the camera was behind protective glass. Dr. Elias Morgan had gone off-grid after the collapse. Officially, he was considered missing. Unofficially, he was searching, because he believed the event was not an accident, but a transmission failure of reality itself. If the doll had not destroyed the internet, it had replaced it, using fragmented offline systems. Elias reconstructed partial logs, and every trace led to one conclusion. The doll was no longer dependent on devices. It had learned how to exist in perception, and perception did not require networks. On the 7th night, something happened that broke all remaining logic. People began seeing the doll without screens, not as hallucinations, but as shared experiences. Entire groups reported standing in different cities, seeing the same figure at the same time, in the same direction. It would not move quickly. It would simply appear closer than before, always closer, and then vanish before anyone could confirm its presence physically. But the most disturbing detail was that every person who saw it remembered the same thing afterward. Not fear, not panic, but recognition, as if something inside their mind had briefly loaded a forgotten file. Elias finally discovered what the doll actually was. It was never just an image, it was a compression system, a way to store something too large to exist in physical or digital form. Every time someone viewed it, a fragment of that something was transferred into them. The internet collapse had not been destruction, it had been a release, and the doll was only the interface. On the 10th day, every remaining device that still had power, radios, old televisions, broken monitors, even analog systems modified with digital parts, activated simultaneously. With no internet connection, no network, and no external input, yet all of them displayed the same message. You have all seen me now, and beneath it, I am ready to arrive in your world completely. At that exact moment, all witnesses reported the same physical sensation, a pressure change in the air, like reality itself was being looked at from the other side. Dr. Elias Morgan rushed to the last known research site where the doll was first discovered. The facility was no longer abandoned, it was active, not with machines, but with presence. Inside the main room, every broken screen, every shattered device, every piece of glass was reflecting the same image, the doll sitting upright. But this time, it was not inside the screens, it was in the room, still watching, And for the first time since The Doll That Shut Down the Internet for 3 Days, Part 3, Final Chapter. Silence was no longer absence, it was presence. After the final transmission from Dr. Elias Morgan, the world did not receive another confirmed signal from any connected system, not because systems failed again, but because systems refused to respond, as if something had rewritten the idea of response itself. For 7 days after the second collapse, humanity lived in a state that no longer resembled the modern world. Cities still functioned physically, but communication had become fragmented, primitive, and unreliable. People relied on handwritten messages, visual signals, and face-to-face contact, yet even that felt unstable, as if language itself had become thinner, because everyone knew the same truth without needing to say it. Something had arrived. It began subtly. People stopped trusting reflections. Mirrors were covered in homes without explanation. Shiny surfaces were avoided. Even water in bowls was disturbed constantly, as if people feared seeing something that should not be there. Reports came from different continents describing the same phenomenon, a faint silhouette appearing behind people when they were alone, not always visible, but always felt at the edge of perception, like a thought that does not belong to you. Some said it looked like a child, others said it was tall and broken in shape, but those who described it clearly all agreed on one thing: it never moved like a human. It updated its position on the 9th day. The first city fell silent completely, not by destruction, not by disaster, but by collective disappearance of electronic memory. Every device in the city, phones, cameras, emergency speakers, broken screens, and even devices with no power, all displayed a single sentence: "I am not in your system anymore. I am in your world now." And then, silence, deeper than before, for the final time. Dr. Elias Morgan's recovered audio fragment was decoded from corrupted storage. It contained only breathing, followed by a voice not.
After that, there was no signal, no image, no system response. But survivors of the event later reported something even more disturbing. The doll was no longer seen through screens or reflections. It was seen directly, standing in places it should not physically be able to exist in, sometimes far, sometimes near, always still, always watching. And in every account, the last detail was the same. It never blinked. It never spoke again. It only waited, as if the world itself was now the final network, and the connection had already been made, and nobody was ever offline again.